Good morning. I'm Bob Williams from the Evergreen Freedom Foundation, and welcome to the panel on transparency. We've been doing this for 4 years. I remember 4 years ago when we first started talking about budget transparency, we kind of got some blank looks. Following up on Congressman Boehner's speech today, the legislators are going to face some very difficult times in the session, but this is a great time, a great opportunity to change government. And budget transparency is a major tool in your toolkit in order to do that. A lot of states have done a lot of progress when we talk about some of the difficulties. But imagine if we could get this budget transparency moving forward. And let me just give you a couple examples. The stimulus bill. Imagine if on your website today you could have what the legislature assumed in the budget in terms of federal stimulus money, how much the state governor, your governor, believes they've received, and how much the federal government says they gave you. Now, let me just give you an example. Washington State, the legislature thought they had $3 billion in federal stimulus money. The governor's office thought they had $4.1 billion. When we questioned the difference, they said, well, we don't know, we'll get back to you. That gave me a really comfortable feeling. And then they said, well, you see, after the legislature left session, it appears the federal government's giving some money directly to agencies, like the Superintendent of Public Instruction. They're bypassing the governor, they're bypassing the legislature. And so every week, we send an email out to the agencies asking if they got any federal money, let us know. As an old auditor, an old GAO auditor, that gives me a good comfort feeling. Then I go on this Barack Obama full disclosure website and find that rather than $3 billion or $4.1 billion, there's $6.8 billion. Well, what's the difference between that? Well, they assured me that this would all be reconciled the last week of October. So I go on the website the last week of October, and suddenly the state no longer puts an amount on, and they say go to the federal website. And on the federal website, the state of Washington now has been awarded $1.2 billion less than 1 week before. You kind of look at that and you see the difficulty you're getting in terms of that. Or imagine on your state website, particularly for your Tea Party people, you're able to show the 10-year trend in state revenue and state spending of your general fund and all funds. Because in many cases, although you're hearing about budget cuts, you'll see that all funds are going up because of some of the different games they're playing. Or you're told in the states that you can't cut things. For example, the strings that you were not told on the federal stimulus package. K-12 education, you cannot cut any money to K-12. You have to maintain effort. Higher education, you cannot cut any aid to institutions if you took federal money. Medicaid, you cannot reduce eligibility standards before July 1st of 2008. Well, that's just if you want more money. So obviously the solution is don't take any more federal money and you don't have those strings attached. But the more you can put those things up there to show what's occurring. But the one that I love, having been a legislator for 10 years and now running a think tank for 20 years, is you always hear from the governor or from the spenders, you can't cut K-12 and you can't cut higher ed. Okay, let's put it up on the website. Let's talk about Washington State, $11,500 per child per year. That sounds like a lot of money to me. What are the outcomes? Oh, we don't show that. Well, what are the outcomes? 1/3 of the kids drop out from 9th to 12th grade. 1/3 of the kids graduate and are not prepared for the workforce. Now, I went to school. That would be a 2/3 failure rate, but they don't talk about that. So only 1/3 of the kids graduate and are prepared for the workforce or go to college. But 57% of those who go to college need a remedial course in math or in English. I'll tell you, if you start showing that on a website, you're going to get the Tea Party people really screaming. And then if you had just a minor bill that said, we're not going to fund the remediation anymore. We're going to require the high school that graduated that child to fund the cost of remediation if the child needs it. You want to talk about getting public support for something? Now, that's just Washington State. Obviously, we don't spend enough money. So let's look at Newark, New Jersey. They spend $20,500 per child per year. And the results in Newark, New Jersey is 70% of the kids drop out from 9th to 12th grade. 70%. Obviously, it's not money. Well, higher education, the sacred cow of most states, because, and I don't want to offend any legislators here, having been a legislator for 10 years, it was my experience that in our state and in most states, normally the legislators who volunteer to serve on the higher education committees in the legislature come from districts that have universities or colleges. and they want more money. And you rarely find any conservative or any budget people or someone like Bob, who used to carry a calculator around because we didn't have computers in those days, asking the tough questions. So imagine on your transparency website, if you showed for every college and university in your state the graduation rates. Washington State, we have one of our colleges, after 6 years, less than 50% of the kids get a degree. Now imagine if you're that parent or student, 6 years of student loans and you don't get a degree. Or imagine if you were to put together everything and show the placement rate, the jobs, the salary type. That's what we're hopeful transparency will lead us. And so today we have 3 excellent panelists to talk about what's happening in the various states. It's my pleasure to first introduce Colorado Representative B.J. Nickel. She serves on the House Judiciary Committee, the State Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. She was recently appointed to serve on the board of the newly formed Colorado Channel Authority, which will oversee TV productions of the House and Senate and the legislature. She's been called a rising star in the legislature since coming to the legislature. She succeeded in enacting relevant legislation in her first term of office, despite not being the majority party. And she has been dubbed Miss Transparency. That's the name I love. For enacting legislation which makes Colorado one of a few states that have put the state's checkbook online. Now, I've worked with a lot of people in Colorado legislature, and I know that's a major achievement. We used to have our own battles with former Governor Owens on transparency, but I